I'm sitting here, hands trembling as I grip a phone that doesn't belong to me. It's the phone of the man I was going to marry in 3 weeks. But this phone holds a terrible secret. Pictures of him with another woman. Pictures of him kissing. Her, laughing with her, in a house I don't recognize. And the worst part? They're both wearing wedding rings. My heart feels like it's been torn out and thrown onto the floor. The man I thought was my soulmate, the man I loved for 2 years, is already married. He's been living a double life. While I've been planning our future together, he's been living another life, one with her. But before I tell you how I found this phone, and how everything I thought I knew about my life fell apart in one instant, let me go back to the beginning. Let me take you back to 3 days ago when I was still blissfully unaware that my entire world was built on lies. 3 days ago, everything was perfect. I had a job I loved, a cozy apartment, and most importantly, I had James. He was everything I ever wanted, kind, funny, and successful. He was so in love with me, or so I thought. He always made me feel like I was the most important person in his life. James worked as a sales manager for a big company downtown, and his job required him to travel frequently. I never questioned it. Why would I? He was the man I was going to marry. We had been planning our wedding for months, picking out the dress, the flowers, the invitations. My mom was already crying happy tears. My best friend Sarah was going to be my maid of honor. Everything was perfect. James would always call me when he was away on business trips, and every time he'd say, "I miss you so much, baby. I can't wait to come home to you." And when he returned, he'd bring me little gifts, flowers, chocolates, sometimes a beautiful necklace. He was everything a woman could wish for, and I believed him. But 3 days ago, something felt off. He came, home from a week-long trip to Chicago, but he seemed different. Tired, jumpy, distracted. When his phone rang during dinner, he quickly turned it off, muttering something about work emails. But his face, when he looked at the screen, told a different story. He was scared. That night, while James was in the shower, I was cleaning up the dishes from dinner. His jacket was hanging over the back of the chair, and something fell out of the pocket, a phone. But not the usual phone he always carried. His regular phone was charging on the kitchen counter. This was a phone I had never seen before. I picked it up, intending to put it back in his pocket, but then the screen lit up. A text preview popped up. "Miss you, honey. When are you coming home? Love, your wife, Emma." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My hands started shaking so badly that I almost dropped the phone. Wife? What wife? I was supposed to be his wife. We were getting married in 3 weeks. I knew I shouldn't look any further, but my heart was pounding so hard that I couldn't stop myself. I opened the phone, desperate to understand what was going on. What I found shattered everything. Hundreds of text messages between James and Emma. Messages that spanned years, messages that said, "I love you. Can't wait to see you. Our anniversary dinner was perfect." These messages went back 3 years, longer than James and I had even been together. But the worst part wasn't the texts. The worst part was the pictures. Picture after picture of James and Emma together, at restaurants, at the beach, in bed. Together. And in every one of them, they were wearing wedding rings. I found their wedding photos. Beautiful pictures of a ceremony in a garden with white roses everywhere. Emma looked so happy. James looked so happy too. The exact same way he looked when he proposed to me. The date on the wedding photos was 4 years ago. 4 years ago. That meant James was already married when he met me. Already married when he asked me out on our first date. Already married when he told me he loved me. Already married when he proposed. I was dizzy, my head spinning. How could this be happening? How could he lie to me for so long? But then I saw something even worse. A calendar app on the phone. I opened it and saw his real schedule. The business trips he'd told me about? They weren't business trips at all. He was spending 3 days a week with me and 4 days a week with her. He had created a perfect system where neither of us knew about the other. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. How could he do this? How could someone lie so effortlessly, so perfectly? I sat there, feeling like I was going to be sick. But then, I heard the shower turn off. James would be coming downstairs any minute. I quickly put the phone back in his jacket pocket and wiped my tears. What was I supposed to do now? Should I confront him? Should I pretend I didn't see anything? I had so many questions, but no answers. James came downstairs, acting normal, happy. "Hey, beautiful," he said, kissing my forehead. "Thanks for cleaning up. You're amazing." I managed to smile, but inside, everything was falling apart. I had just learned the man I loved was living a double life. "How was your shower?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Great," he replied, his face lighting up. "I was thinking we could watch a movie tonight, cuddle on the couch." I nodded, feeling like I was suffocating. We sat on the couch together, but all I could think about was the phone in his jacket pocket. The phone that held all the evidence of his lies. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to his even breathing, but all I could think about was Emma. Did she know about me? Was she sitting at home, waiting for her husband to come home, missing him just like I missed him? The next morning, James left for what he said was another business trip. But I knew he wasn't going anywhere. I had to find out everything. I needed to know the truth. I followed him. I drove to his apartment, thinking I would find the truth. But when I saw him drive into a neighborhood I didn't recognize, I felt my heart drop. He parked in front of a beautiful house, and there she was, Emma. She came running down the steps, threw her arms around him, and kissed him. I couldn't believe it. The life I thought I had with him wasn't mine. He was living a whole other life with her. I drove home in a daze, feeling like I was walking through a nightmare. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I wasn't going to let him destroy everything. I needed answers, and I needed them now. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, the reality of the situation began to settle in. James wasn't just living with Emma. There had to be more. I couldn't shake the feeling that there were more lies to uncover. As I started to search for more information, I stumbled upon something that left me shaken. Another woman. Maria. I had no idea who she was at first. I found her name on a credit card bill James had left lying around the apartment. It was under an account that he used for business expenses, but Maria's name was listed as an authorized user. I froze. Who was Maria? I scoured through the rest of the documents, looking for anything that could tell me more. That's when I found an old text message from James to someone named Maria. It was affectionate, more so than any message he'd ever sent to me. He called her baby, and the text ended with, "I'll be home soon. Can't wait to see you." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. There was another woman, and she had been in James's life longer than I had known. But where was Maria? Who was she to James? I knew I had to find out. I had to know how deep the lies went. I started researching Maria, digging through social media profiles, mutual connections, anything I could find. Then I stumbled upon a Facebook post, a post from a mutual friend of mine and Maria's. She had tagged Maria in a photo, and that's when I saw it. The two of them together, smiling, arms wrapped around each other, in a photo that looked like it had been taken at a party. Maria. She was real. And from the looks of it, James had been spending time with her too. It wasn't long before I decided I needed to talk to Maria. I needed answers, and I couldn't do this alone. If James had been lying to her too, she deserved to know the truth, just like I did. I found a way to contact her, and the first conversation we had was unexpected. Maria had no idea who I was at first. I had to explain everything, slowly, carefully. I know this sounds crazy, I said, but James, he's not who he says he is. He's been lying to both of us. The shock in her voice was palpable when she replied, "What do you mean? Who are you?" "I'm Anita, his fiancé, and I think we both need to know the truth. We need to figure out what's going on." It was a painful conversation. Maria was in disbelief, much like I had been just a few days ago. But after a while, she agreed to meet. We decided to gather evidence. Together, we'd expose the man who had been lying to both of us. We spent hours going through his things, comparing notes, and piecing together the truth. The more we found, the more disturbing it became. As Maria and I continued to exchange information, the scope of James's deception began to grow darker. I thought I had uncovered the truth about his double life, but every layer I peeled back revealed more lies and secrets. I thought I had reached the end of it, but it felt like we were just scratching the surface. We needed more evidence. We needed to catch him in the act, expose him once and for all. Maria and I spent the following days cautiously tracking his movements. We kept our distance, not letting him suspect that anything was amiss. I began following him on his business trips again, though this time I was tracking him not out of love or curiosity, but with the intent to finally confront him with undeniable evidence. But as we dug deeper, we realized something troubling. James wasn't just lying to us. He was living multiple lives with multiple women. Maria and I weren't the only ones. How many others had he fooled? How many others were out there just like us, living in a world that James had carefully crafted for each of us? The deeper we went into the investigation, the more I felt like I was losing myself in the lies he had built around me. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the sheer scale of it. The number of people he had deceived, the amount of money he had stolen, and the lives he had wrecked. He wasn't just a liar. He was a master manipulator, playing us all as if we were characters in a game he controlled. Maria and I decided to meet in person to discuss what we had learned. We couldn't keep relying on phone calls or texts to uncover the full extent of James's manipulation. We needed to sit down, face to face, and devise our next steps. We met at a cafe in a quiet corner of the city, away from prying eyes. I had been feeling restless and paranoid, as if James's eyes were on me even when he wasn't around. I constantly felt like I was walking on eggshells, waiting for him to catch on to the fact that I knew something was wrong. Maria arrived, her eyes tired, but determined. It was clear that she was just as invested in this as I was. We had both been betrayed by the same man, and now we were united in our pursuit of the truth. We needed to expose him, not just for what he had done to us, but for the countless other women he had hurt. We sat in the corner booth, our eyes scanning the room for anyone who might be watching. We spoke in hushed tones, sharing the evidence we had gathered. "I went through his office again," Maria said, her voice low. "He has more phones than I realized. I found 2 more in his drawer, both with different numbers. One of them was marked as business, but I didn't recognize the name attached to it." I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. The more we uncovered, the worse it became. "I found the same thing," I said, glancing around nervously. "More credit card bills with different names on them. I don't think this is just about the 3 of us, Maria. I think he's been doing this for years. And I think there's more." Maria's face went pale, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "You think there are more women?" she whispered. I nodded slowly. "I know there are. I found a notebook. It was in his office. He kept a detailed record of all the women he's been with, names, schedules, even financial details. It was like he was running a business." Maria's hand trembled as she reached for her coffee cup. "So, he's been lying to all of us for years, and we're just the tip of the iceberg." "Exactly," I said, my voice steady despite the overwhelming sense of dread I felt in my chest. "I don't know how many other women there are, but I'm going to find out. We need to expose him. The more I think about it, the more I realize this isn't just about us. This is about stopping him before he does more damage." We sat in silence for a moment, each of us processing the enormity of the situation. It felt like the weight of the world was on our shoulders, but there was no turning back now. We had already gone too far to stop. And no matter how terrifying it was, we couldn't let James get away with it. As the investigation progressed, we uncovered something even darker. James wasn't working alone. There was an entire network behind him, one that was helping him manipulate, steal, and cover up his lies. It was no longer just about one man's betrayal. It was about a criminal operation that had been running under our noses for years. One day, while going through James's emails, I stumbled upon a thread that seemed to confirm my suspicions. He had been communicating with someone about new opportunities and client acquisition. But these weren't business emails. They were coded messages, talking about new women to target, how to manage their expectations, and even how to steal their money. I showed the emails to Maria, and her face turned white as she read through the correspondence. "This is bigger than we thought," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "He's running an operation. He's targeting women for their money, using charm and lies to get what he wants. A long line of victims. We didn't know exactly how many others were involved, but the emails made it clear that this wasn't just one man's actions. There were others who were complicit in his schemes, others who were helping him exploit women for their own gain. With every passing day, Maria and I grew closer, bound by our shared mission to expose James and his network. But we both knew that we needed to act soon. The more evidence we gathered, the more dangerous things became. James was getting suspicious. He was starting to notice that I wasn't acting the same, that something had changed. But I couldn't confront him. Not yet. I had to gather more evidence, something that would leave him no room to wiggle out of the truth. He was too good at lying, too manipulative. If I confronted him without irrefutable proof, he would talk his way out of it. We spent our nights compiling everything we had found: the emails, the photos, the records of his multiple identities, the financial documents detailing his theft. But it wasn't enough yet. We needed something more. A final piece of evidence that would tie everything together and expose him for who he really was. We decided to take one more step. We would follow him. We knew we were close. With every piece of evidence we gathered, the picture of James's life, his lies, and his network became clearer. But there was one last thing we needed to do before we could confront him with everything we had found. We needed to catch him in the act. Maria and I sat in her living room, our faces pale from the sleepless nights we had spent digging through James's world of deception. We had gathered mountains of evidence, photos, financial documents, email threads, but we both knew we needed something more tangible, something that would completely shut down any attempt he might make to talk his way out of this. Tomorrow, Maria said, her voice trembling slightly. We follow him. We need to see what he does when he thinks no one is watching. I nodded, my heart pounding at the thought. We had been careful up until now, keeping our distance and ensuring that James didn't suspect we were onto him, but tomorrow we would be in the thick of it. We would follow him wherever he went, making sure to document everything. I'm ready, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. I wasn't sure I was ready to face the man I once loved, the man who had broken my heart and betrayed me in ways I could never have imagined. Maria's expression softened, and she placed a hand on mine. We're doing the right thing. He's been hurting us, and countless others. He deserves to pay for what he's done. We spent the rest of the night preparing. We went over our plan carefully, making sure we had everything we needed. Phones for recording, notebooks for taking notes, and a camera for capturing anything we might miss. We couldn't afford to slip up now. This was our moment, and we couldn't let it slip away. The next day, we followed James. It was surreal, seeing him from the outside, the way he carried himself, walking around like he had the world at his feet. He still had no idea that Maria and I were working together to expose him. He was still playing his game, pretending to be the man he thought we both wanted him to be. We kept our distance, following him through the city. Every so often he would glance over his shoulder, as if sensing something was off, but he never caught on. We stayed hidden, watching him, documenting his every move. As we followed him through the busy streets, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping up my spine. What was he doing? Where was he going? Why was he acting so normal? Did he have no idea that his entire life was about to fall apart? Finally, he turned into a quiet residential street, pulling into a house that wasn't his. My heart skipped a beat. Was this it? Was this where Emma lived? Or was there someone else? I motioned for Maria to stay down as I watched from the car. James parked and got out, making his way up to the front door. I was too far away to see who answered, but when the door opened, I caught a glimpse of someone. A woman. She was blonde, tall, and elegant, and she threw her arms around James as if she hadn't seen him in days. That was it. It was Emma. She was the woman who had been living in the fantasy world James had created. But there was no time for emotion now. We had to stay focused. We had to get the evidence we needed. Maria's voice was barely a whisper as she turned to me. This is it. We have everything we need. I nodded, but a part of me still didn't want to believe it. I had hoped, deep down, that maybe I was wrong. But the truth was staring me in the face. James had been living two lives, and I was just one of the many victims. As I watched them from the car, I saw them embrace. They kissed like lovers who, had been apart for years. Emma's face lit up with happiness, while James held her, looking as if everything was perfect. The world he had built for her was real. But for me, it was a lie. I turned to Maria. "We need to confront him. Now." Maria nodded. "Let's do it. He's not going to get away with this anymore." The confrontation was inevitable. We couldn't wait any longer. We had the evidence. We had the truth. And now it was time to expose James for what he really was. Maria and I parked the car a few blocks away, our hearts pounding with the weight of everything we had uncovered. We had followed James all the way to Emma's house, and now it was time for the final act. We walked toward the house, our footsteps echoing in the quiet street. As we approached, I could feel the tension building between us. This was the moment where everything would change. There would be no turning back after this. When we reached the door, I knocked. We waited in silence, the weight of what we were about to do hanging heavily in the air. James answered, his face lighting up in that familiar smile he always gave me. But this time, I didn't smile back. This time, everything was different. "Anita, Maria," he said, clearly surprised to see us standing there together. "What are you doing here?" His smile faltered as we walked past him into the house. Emma was sitting on the couch, her face a mixture of confusion and concern when she saw us. I couldn't help but feel for her. She had no idea what was going on. She had no idea that her perfect life was built on a foundation of lies. But I wasn't here to comfort her. I was here to confront the man who had betrayed us both. "James," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "It's over. We know everything. We know about Emma. We know about Maria. And we know about the other women. This..." I motioned to the house, to everything he had built. "This is a lie." He took a step back, his eyes widening in shock. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. "You two need to leave. Now." "Not until you tell Emma the truth," Maria said, her voice cold and firm. "Tell her everything." James's expression shifted, turning from shock to anger. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're both insane. I don't have to explain myself to you." But we weren't backing down. We weren't going to let him escape anymore. I pulled out my phone and began showing Emma the evidence, the photos, the texts, the calendar with James's real schedule. I could see her face crumble as the truth sank in. No, this can't be true," Emma whispered, her hand trembling as she reached for the phone. "James..." I watched as Emma's world fell apart. She wasn't just losing James, she was losing everything she thought she knew about him. The perfect life, the fairy tale marriage, the man who had promised her forever. It was all a lie. "You've been lying to both of us," Maria said, her voice cold. "And you're not getting away with it anymore." James's anger flared. "You're ruining everything!" he shouted, his fists clenched at his sides. "You think you've won? You think you can expose me? I've been doing this for years. You're nothing." But I wasn't scared of him anymore. He was nothing but a coward. And this was the end of his reign of lies. "Don't you see?" I said, my voice unwavering. "You've destroyed so many lives. And now we're going to make sure everyone knows the truth." Suddenly, the door burst open. 2 FBI agents rushed in, their guns drawn. James froze, his face going pale. "FBI, get on the ground!" one of the agents shouted. James tried to run, but the agents were too quick. They tackled him to the ground, handcuffing him as he screamed in fury. "We've been watching you for a long time," one of the agents said, his voice cold and professional. "Your operation is over." James was arrested, and his entire network of deception unraveled. The FBI had been investigating him for years, but it wasn't until Maria and I came forward with our evidence that they were able to make the arrest. Over the next few months, the full extent of James's crimes was revealed. He had been running a network of scams, targeting women like Emma, Maria, and me. His total stolen assets were estimated in the millions. The FBI had already been tracking him for years, but his careful manipulation and well-placed network had allowed him to continue his crimes without detection for far too long. For Emma, the news was devastating. She had no idea that her husband was living a double life, but in time, she found strength, and with the help of the FBI, she began to rebuild. She was given the chance to start fresh, away from the lies James had fed her. As for Maria and me, we were left with the task of healing from the trauma we had both endured. The betrayal was deep, but with each passing day, I found myself growing stronger. I wasn't the naive woman I once was. I had been through hell, but I had emerged. On the other side, Maria and I kept in touch, and together we started a nonprofit to help other women who had been victimized by romance scams. We traveled the country, speaking at conferences, working with law enforcement, and offering support to victims who had been deceived by men like James. In time, I realized that what had happened to me wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of the person James was. He was a manipulator, a liar, and a thief. But I had survived. I had fought back. And my real life was just beginning. In the story we just shared, Avia, Maria, and Emma faced unimaginable heartbreak. They uncovered the lies, exposed the truth, and reclaimed their power. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't without its sacrifices. But they did it. They took control of their story and chose to heal, no matter how long it took. Now, I want to hear from you. If you were in their shoes, how would you handle the situation? What would your next move be if you found yourself standing in the midst of such overwhelming betrayal? Life has a way of testing us when we least expect it, and we all face moments that could either break us or make us stronger. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of the strength you possess even in your darkest moments, then I invite you to join us on this journey of growth, healing, and resilience. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me, and together, we can continue exploring stories that empower, inspire, and challenge us to be better versions of ourselves. Remember, you are not alone, and no matter what life throws at you, you have the power to rise, rebuild, and thrive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.